Hey everyone, this is Ira with the Library's Makerspace back again with another video tutorial for you guys. Today we're going to be working on a 3D model of a USB stick holder that we're going to make in Fusion 360, which is a CAD program that you can use to make prototypes for 3D models, to 3D print, and other types of things like that. And you can actually get a free personal use version, which I'll go through. But just to give you an idea of kind of what I'm aiming for today, essentially I'm going to be, this is a 2D design of what I want to make. So basically a top-down design of these little slots right here. This is where the USB sticks are going to be slotted and sticking into the holder itself. As you kind of see, my sketch is a little not the best, but at least it gives you an idea of kind of what I'm going for, and it's got measurements of each thing, such as how wide I want to have it, the thickness of this middle part from down here to up here. I measured that. I used a thing called calipers, these things, which are super handy to have. So yeah, I have all my measurements. Basically right now I just use this sketch as kind of my first idea of what I want to, how I want to approach making this model, and then I'll show you guys how to go from a sketch that you put on paper to sketching it out into Fusion 360 and then actually being able to turn it into a 3D model that you can then essentially 3D print and have as a functional item. So stay tuned and I'll walk you through the next section. Alright, so first things first, you want to get Fusion 360, so I would just go ahead and Google Fusion 360 for personal use, and you should get to this page right here. You want to make sure you're at the for personal use page. There's different types of licenses you can get. This one's free for personal use for home projects, non-commercial stuff, just things that for your home use that you're not going to make money on. They also have a subscription for students, like those that are going to college, so they've got an educational license. If you are in school, you can look into that. And if you're looking to do this for commercial use, they also have a commercial subscription. For today, and the computers that we use here at the library, I've just got the personal use version because none of what we do in here for it is to make money. It's just to teach people how to use it. So, but you'll basically want to scroll down here and you'll click on Activate Fusion 360 for personal use. Click on Get Started, and then you're going to have to create an account with an email address and a password, and then you'll get soon after that a download prompt where you can then download Fusion 360 and install it using your account information. Alright, so before we get into the modeling aspect and creating today, I'm going to go over just briefly the interface for Fusion 360. So essentially what you've got when you first open up the program, up to your left, you have what's called the data panel. Essentially, this is an area where all of your projects are going to be saved. And if you want to start a new project, click on New Project. It's going to bring you a little dialog like that, and you can name your project, and that's where all of your Fusion 360 project files are going to get saved. Up here, you also have your file dialog, where you can click on New Design, New Drawing, New Electronics Design. That's for, I believe, creating printed circuit board parts. I haven't explored that, but you can also upload files. You can export files if you click on that. You can do Fusion 360 archive files or any of these other file types, say like this SketchUp file type or STEP files, which are pretty common in other CAD pieces of software. You also have your undo and redo functions, and that's pretty much it for up here. And just for today, to kind of make it clear in terms of what area we're going to be working in for our design and modeling today, we're going to be using what's called the design workspace. And what Fusion calls this is it's a place where you create mechanical designs that contain mostly prismatic geometry. To create solid bodies, so such as this shape right there. And essentially what we're going to be doing during this class, or this little tutorial, is making 2D designs first. So if you can visualize this as not having depth and just the basic two-dimensional interface of this, then we're going to learn how to make things turn into a 3D function such as this. So we'll go over that, but for today, today's lesson, we're just going to be staying in the design workspace. There's other workspaces that you can explore if you want. I haven't explored them too in depth, so I'm not really going to go through much of them, but there's things like the animation workspace where you can create animations of how your design would be operated or assembled. There's a simulation workspace where you can determine basically how your model is going to work in real-world conditions. And then there's a manufacturing workspace, which is good for if you want to take your model and then have it machined out with a CNC machine. This workspace is where you're going to figure out how the machine itself is going to figure out tool paths in order to cut out your model from stock materials such as wood or plastic or metal. So, and then there's a generative design workspace where you can make interesting models like this, as well as a rendering workspace. But today we're just going to be staying in the design workspace for our exercise. All right, so next up we have essentially the modeling design workspace area that we're going to work in today. It's mostly going to be in this solid area, as well as it's called the sketch area, where in the sketch mode you're just basically making 2D designs that you're then going to turn into 3D geometry. And then under the solid mode itself, you can use tools such as extrude to add depth to a 2D design, or you can actually use existing shapes such as a box or a cylinder or whatnot and put them into your design. There's also other workspaces under the design workspace, such as surface, for surface modeling. That's good for like more organic shapes, such as some of the examples I've seen is people wanting to like 3D model a sports car or something like that in Fusion, which looks pretty complicated, so I haven't really explored that, but they've used the surface modeling area for that. Under sheet model, that basically gives you kind of an idea of how you would model things in sort of basically things are going to look like they're modeled out of sheet metal, as you can see from this flange example right there. So then we've got our three work areas right here under design, and then for each one of these workspaces we also have what's called the tools mode. So under this you've got things like your add-ins, which essentially are like plugins that you can add through the Fusion 360 App Store. It's basically just added functionality to include in whatever you're modeling. You also have a thing called the Inspect tool, which is really cool. It's pretty interesting. It just gives you a lot of real-world measuring tools to see if your model itself would work in a real-world scenario. So that's pretty interesting and fun to kind of play around with. Then you also have a selection tool which you can play around with. So we'll go back to solid modeling. Below this, you've got what's called your browser. So essentially, this area right here, the more that you create in terms of like whatever sort of components you want to add to your model, this will get populated with whatever sorts of things you add on to your designs. Is it in basically a tree form, and then you can go back and you can delete things. You can go up here, and once you're ready to 3D print your model, you can click on export. You should be able to export that file out to get 3D printed. Just below right here, you can put in comments on your design. So if you're working with other people on a model, you can add comments here. Right down here is your timeline area. So what's really cool about the timeline area is that with every thing that you add to your models, there's basically going to be a timeline that's populated. And what's nice about that is you can actually, if you need to change something that you created initially when you were designing your model, you can actually go back using this timeline function and change whatever you need, and then it will actually make the changes from that point forward, so you don't have to go through each part of your model and make certain changes. It will do that for you. All right, so down here we have basically our views parameters. So we've got an orbit tool, a pan tool, zoom, display settings. So what I've changed for this is the environment. So right now I'm what's called infinity pool. That's the scene right here. I can change it to gray room, make it a little bit darker. I can go to photo booth, which is super light. It looks like it kind of got rid of the grid. I can't quite see it on my monitor, so. But if you are sensitive, if your eyes are sensitive to like brighter colors, you might want to play around with this to make your modeling experience better. So I'm going to go click Infinity Pool. That looks pretty good. That's easy on my eyes. You also have options for such things like a layout grid. I like to use that. It just makes modeling a lot easier when you're using precise measurements. If you take that away, you're basically kind of just modeling in space without a grid or a layout to kind of work with. So I always make sure that the layout grid is checked. Under multiple views, this would be good if you had like a multi-monitor setup and you wanted to basically kind of have multiple viewpoints for when you are modeling. I'm going to go back to single view right there. Then moving along, once we get back up into this area, under solid modeling, we have our create tools. So essentially this is the things we can do include extruding, so that's basically adding depth to a 2D design. You can do things like revolve, which means you're revolving around an axis, like a 2D axis, turning into a 3D design. A sweep, things like that, adding holes or threads to your models, which is pretty cool. You've got existing 3D shapes that you can use already. And then you've got tools such as a patterning tool. If you basically need things to be set up in different patterns, you'd use these tools for that. Thickening up your models, things like that. Under Create Mesh, this is where you would, if you wanted to try to edit any existing 3D models that you found online or wanted to combine two different 3D models that you found and downloaded, you would use the mesh area, go under Create Mesh to play around with those. But I must say, Fusion's not really the greatest for editing existing 3D models. It's better for like creating 3D models from the ground up instead of taking an existing model that you find online and then modify. So, all right, moving on. So we are now going to explore the Modify tab. This just gives you some extra functionality for when your design becomes a 3D object. You have options such as fillet, which adds kind of rounded edges to your models, or a chamfer, which applies a bevel to several of your, or one or many edges of your model. You've got a combine function, a scaling function. You can split things, you can offset parts of your model, you can move and copy them, you can align parts, etc. So that's something to explore if you want to learn how to modify your models to a certain degree. Then we have the Assembly tab over here. I haven't really used this too much, so I'm not going to really go over it, but this is essentially an area that you'd want to explore if you get into 3D modeling and want to basically make things that have joints or motion or work together, different components of your model that work together as one for motion or as a joint. So this is an area that you'd want to explore for that. I really haven't gotten too deep into it yet, so I'm not going to go over it today, but that's just something you can explore on your own as well. Then we've got the Construct tab, and so this gives you options to construct things. Say, if you made a model and you needed to make an offset off the side, so looking at this box over here, if you needed to make an offset from that and create something offset from that model, you would use that offset plane tool for that. You can also do make planes at different angles, tangent planes, making a plane between 3 points, etc. So this is the area where you would, if you need to construct things off of certain planes, you would use this tool to accomplish that. Up next, we've got the Inspect tool, which I kind of talked about before. That's just another tool that you can use to apply different kinds of analysis to your model to see how it would work in real world conditions. There's also a measuring tool that's pretty nice and handy to have if you need to measure different parts of your model and get exact measurements from one point to another. The Insert tab is pretty cool. You can do things such as, it's called Insert Canvas, which means this is where you can insert a JPEG or like a PNG file of an image. So on this example, it's a car. But I've used this before and seen other people use it before for things such as like creating a puzzle piece from an existing puzzle piece where you've taken a photo of the puzzle piece and then you've inserted the picture itself here into Fusion, and you basically use a tracing outline tool to create a model of that puzzle piece from using the overlay of the picture. You also use the Insert tab to do things like insert a mesh, so that's where you can insert a OBJ or STL 3D file that you'd find online. You can insert scalable vector graphics files, which is pretty cool if you basically have a SVG, like a logo of something, and you want to try to trace that and make it into basically have a little bit of 3D depth. You'd use the insert SVG file. Yeah, so there's lots of things to explore. You can also, if you click on Insert McMaster Car Component, this gives you the option to actually insert 3D models of things like screws and bolts, etc. I'm not going to go over that, but it's a pretty cool function of the insert tool. So, all right, and then finally we've got our selection tool. So you've got your basic window selection, freeform, paint, etc. Then up here you've got what's called your extensions. I haven't really used this very much. This just gives you some extra functionality in terms of like the manufacturing workspace, but I really haven't used it too much. So I believe you get, it's called cloud credits to be able to use these extensions, but I'm not going to go over those because I haven't used them quite yet in anything that we've done in here. So. Then up here you've got what's called your job status, and this will show you if you're working online into your cloud account. This will be on like this. You'll also notice every couple of weeks, if you don't open up Fusion super often, when you first open up Fusion, you'll notice this will have like the number 1 by it, and that just means Fusion is updating. They update the program every couple of weeks, and if you do see a 1 there, you can click on that and it'll show you a progress bar of it downloading and installing it for you. All right, then up here you've got different things like your account, your preferences that you can set up initially when you first install Fusion. One thing you'll want to note under the General tab up here is that you want your default modeling orientation as Z up, so your Z axis going upwards instead of Y up. That's just going to make it much easier for you to make your 3D models and not make it confusing. Then up here you have your Help tab. So there's lots to explore here. There's a Fusion 360 forum and community, a quick setup you can walk through. There's if you need support or diagnostics, you would click on these tabs. There's also lots of information on Autodesk Fusion 360's website, as well as lots of resources on YouTube of people walking you through tutorials for kind of whatever sort of things you want to learn in Fusion. All right, and then finally we've got our little home area right here. So once you get into modeling, a lot of your views are going to change constantly, especially if your model gets kind of complex. So what's really handy about this box home tool up here is that if you're kind of, say, I don't know, underneath the model that you've made, just kind of inspecting parts of it, or you need to add different components to it. If you need to recenter your view, if you just click up here to the home view, that's just going to recenter it to this basic kind of like side profile view, which is super helpful if you need to basically get back to a home view and see what your model looks like and the sort of overall scheme and structure of things. All right, so now we are on to the super fun part of this tutorial where we actually are going to be creating the 3D model of the USB stick holder. Before we get started though, I'm going to want to do what's called create a component for each part of the model. So there's basically going to be a body to the model, and then there's going to be the little slot parts, the little stick holders that you're going to actually insert the USB stick into to have them be a holder. So what I will do first is I will go up here and I will right click and I'll do new component, and I'm going to name this let's see, whoops, USB, I'll call it the body. I'm going to create another component, right click, new component, I'll do USB, I'll call it USB stick slots. All right, and so what you can do is there's this button right here to activate your component. So I'm going to go up here and activate this body component. That's what we're going to work on first, and then we're going to do the slots first. So once we decide to move on to using the slots or creating the slots, we'll click that to activate that component. So we'll go back up here to the body, and I will click activate component, and then now what we're going to do is go up to the create mode right there, and we're going to click on what's called create sketch. So this is where you're going to first create a 2D design before you turn it into a 3D design. So we'll click on create sketch. Essentially what it's going to do is ask you what plane do you want to create this on. I found that creating models on this plane right here, if you choose that plane, it's much easier to actually model things rather than choosing, say, that plane or this other plane. You would actually be modeling things from the side instead of a top-down view. So choosing this plane right here is the best for starting out. All right, so then after that, you're going to want to go back up here to create, and you can actually see under the sketch function, you have all of these different options, such as using lines, a two-point rectangle, three-point center rectangle. You can use different kinds of circles, arcs, polygons, ellipses. There's a slot function. We're not going to use that today, but that's an option. There's splines. You can also include text and things of that nature. There's also under tools, you can add a fillet to an existing sketch. You can trim your sketch, trim parts. You can extend parts of your sketch. You can offset parts of your sketch as well, or you can move and copy parts of your sketch. What we're going to do though is we're going to go back up here to create, go up to rectangle. We're going to create a two-point rectangle. I'm going to choose to point the first corner right there. I'm going to go up here before I actually get this set to the parameters I want it. Go up to this box up here and click on top, and that's going to rechange my view to a top-down view. That's going to make it easier for me to model. So according to the sketch that I made on paper, I want to make this 25 millimeters, and so you can put in your value 2.5, and then if you click on tab, that's going to tab over to the other value. I want this value to be 125 millimeters. Then if you click enter, so now you've got your first 2D design, this rectangle that basically is 125 millimeters by 25 millimeters. Now what we want to do is click on finish sketch, and then we can click this home view right there. So now you'll see that kind of side view. And now we want to actually turn this into a 3D object. So what we're going to do is go up to create. As you can see, we're out of the sketch mode now. We're back into the solid modeling mode area. So if I click on create, I'm going to click on extrude, and then you just gotta, it automatically chooses the top of this, but sometimes if it doesn't, you just gotta click on that whatever 2D design you want to extrude, and it should turn this kind of light dark blue. So what you can do is actually, if you want to pull up on this, you can actually add depth to your 2D design. I actually do need specific measurements for this USB stick holder, so I'm actually gonna put in the value of, it looks like 12 millimeters total. I'll hit enter, and so now I've actually got my first 3D object. Super simple, but we're on our way to creating the USB stick holder. Alright, before we move on to making the slots, I'm just going to kind of make this look a little bit nicer and kind of get rid of these sharper edges. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to go up here to modify, and I'm going to use this fillet tool. which is super fun to play around with. So I'm going to click on that and click my middle mouse button on my mouse, kind of pan over. And now what I want to do is I basically want to highlight each of these corners. And so if I click on, if I hold Shift and click on those corners, and I can click on that corner, and then you can kind of see I should be able to click on, yeah, highlight that, click on that, and so you've got your the radius value that you want to put in. I'm just going to put in a value of 5 millimeters and see how that looks. I'll hit enter. I really like that. That's just kind of a nice, simple thing to round off the edges. It looks cool to me. I think it works perfectly for sort of the aesthetic of creating a USB stick holder. So I'm going to keep it like that, and now we can move on to making our USB stick slots. All right, so now I basically want to make the stick slots in order to have the USB sticks be able to sit on top of this and have it be a holder. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go down here to the USB stick slots component. I'm going to click on that to activate it. So the body is no longer, the body component is no longer activated. Now it's just the component for making these USB stick slots. So what I'm going to do now is I want to click on Create, and I'm going to go into Create Sketch. And what I want to do is I want to create a sketch on top of this. It's going to ask you what plane or planar face you want to select. I don't want to select this one. I don't want to select this. I don't want to do anything else except selecting this top of the face where I'm going to put the slots at. Click on that. So now it's activated. This is, you can put all types of sketches on the top of this face right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this home view up here. I'm going to click on top. I'm going to click on this arrow right there. So I get kind of a nice like top-down centered view. Zoom in, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Create tool. And I'm going to use the rectangle function. I'm going to use the 2-point rectangle. I'm going to kind of eyeball where I want this to be. It might not be completely accurate, but that's okay for today. So I'm going to click my first point right there, and I'm going to use that tab tool again to put in specific values. So for this, according to the sketch that I made, I actually want that to be 12 millimeters. I'll click on tab, and then I want that value to be 4.5 millimeters, and then I'll click on enter. And now, as you can see, that is basically the first slot of the USB stick holder. So now I need to copy the values, copy these over to this area, and then I need to essentially just extrude down into space into this solid piece of the model in order to make the little slots for the USB sticks. What I want to do before that, though, is just kind of make this, try to eyeball it to make it more centered. So I'm going to use that selection tool. I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to go up to modify, and I'm going to use the move copy tool, and it should let me move this up or down. You can also move to the side. I'm just going to kind of eyeball where I want it. For today, it doesn't need to be exact. I'm just going to kind of basically try to make this model sort of freehand without worrying about the specifics of having these slots centered. So that looks pretty good to me. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm just going to go from that, but that just gives you an idea of what the Move Copy tool does. It's pretty handy for moving sketches or actual 3D bodies around in space. So now what I'm going to do is I'll click Finish Sketch. I'm going to change this home view back up here to this like nice side profile. And now what I want to do is I'm going to extrude this out into a 3D shape. I'm going to go up to Create, go to the Extrude function, click at the top of that, and I don't need it to go up into space too much. I'm just going to do it, I'm going to put in a value of 1 millimeter. And essentially I did that because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make copies of this. I'm going to try to have them spaced out about 10 millimeters apart going this way. And then after I have all these set up, I'm actually going to use the extrude tool again and extrude them down into space so they actually cut through this model. So stay tuned and we will dive into that. All right, so now I want to try to copy this thing that I made right here, and I want to make multiple copies all the way down. And then, like I said, we're going to extrude this down in through this model to make little slots. So what we want to do, essentially, first off, is switch out of this side profile view. I'm going to go over here and click on the top view. So now I have a nice top-down view. And what I'm going to essentially do now is I'm going into this USB stick holder component and the drop-down menu is through here, and I'm actually going to click on the bodies mode. I don't want to go to sketches. I actually want to go into bodies because that's going to highlight the body that I made, the 3D body. And now what I want to do is I just right-click, and then I'm going to do copy, and then I'm actually going to right-click again, and then I'm going to do paste. And that created a second body, and as you can actually see, I can move this out like this. And what I want to do is actually, like I said before, have it 10 millimeters, spaced out 10 millimeters each. So I'm actually going to put in a value of 10 right there. I'm going to highlight this again, make a copy of body 2, copy, and I'm just going to paste it. And I'm going to do the same thing as far as the value goes for how I want them spaced out, 10 millimeters. Just repeating the same process kind of over and over again until I get to the end here. So I'm going to do one more, and then paste, and then I'm going to, as you can see right now, it's about 9 millimeters to the side. I'm going to click on that and do 10. So stay tuned. I'm going to finish off doing all of these till we get to the end here. Alright, so I finished copying and pasting all of these, and I was actually able to get 12 slots onto this. So essentially, when all is said and done and we're able to 3D print this, if everything works and the USB sticks actually fit into there, you'll be able to fit 12 USB sticks into this holder. So I'm going to click on this home tool right now, show you. So now what we want to do is, instead of increasing the depth upwards, we're going to go down through this. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to click Create, we want to go to Extrude, and we want to make sure that we highlight each one of these. So I'm going to click, or I'm going to hold down the Shift button on my keyboard, and then click on that. I'm going to click on that tool, I'm going to click on that little component, that guy, this one, this one, this one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. And so for the value, I'm actually going to extrude it down by negative 12.75, negative 12.75 millimeters. And I'm going to use the operation, a cut operation, to cut through this. So now we can click on OK, or just hit Enter on your keyboard. And you can see that it's actually cut through the body itself. And this will give us a better view of what we're looking at if we actually activate the body component. So if I click on that, click outside right there, you can actually see now it is a fully formed 3D model with those little USB stick slots, which is super cool. And now we're going to try printing it and seeing if it works. So, but as you can see, just with a few steps, you can create really cool, functional, real-world things that can be 3D printed using Fusion 360. So stay tuned for what the 3D printed final product looks like. Before we start printing, actually, this is a really good step that you're going to want to know as well. So if you're happy with your model, like I am right here, and you maybe have a 3D printer at home, or you want to export this file and email it to me to 3D print for you, what you're going to want to do is go up to Documents and Settings, you're going to right click and you want to do choose this option, Save as STL. You can keep format at binary. Structure is one file. Refinement, we can just go to high, and everything else should be good. So if you click on OK, then that'll bring you up this Save STL file dialog, and I'm going to save this to the desktop of this computer. Click on Save, and now you should actually have the .stl file saved and ready to go to open up into whatever 3D printing slicer program that you have connected to your printer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load it up into our 3D slicer that we use for our printers. It's called Cura, and I'm going to see if this prints out and see how the USB sticks fit. So stay tuned. Hey guys, so I'm back, and I did print this. It looks pretty good, but the thing is that it actually these little slots are a little just too small. If I try to fit in a USB stick into it, it's not big enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how you can go back into your original model and edit the sketch for the first slot that we made, and then I'm just going to increase the size of it by about 0.5 millimeters, going down this way and then coming this way. I think that should give it enough room, but I'm going to show you a little trick to how you can edit sketches. So this original sketch, and then after that, what's nice is that we can make that change and it will apply it to every one of these, so you don't have to go back and copy these again. So stay tuned for the next video and we'll go over that. Alright, so now we are back in the original model that we made. I'm going to go up here and change the view to the top view, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use the handy timeline function to actually go back in time and edit the first sketch when I made this first USB stick slot. So what you want to do is hover over this and then right click and then do edit sketch. And what I found, I was trying to do this a couple times and it just wasn't letting me change these values. And I realized it's because we have these things called constraints enabled, which basically constraints in Fusion lock in specific values for whatever sketch geometry you have. So it's really handy to have, and they recommend you put constraints on most of your sketches that you make before you make them 3D. But in this instance, I actually want to get rid of the constraints so we can actually change these values just slightly. This was basically my workaround to trying to get this to work. So what we're going to do is we can just, each one of these is the little constraint tool saying that it's on, and you can actually, if you go over here, you can look where it says show constraints. You can unclick that. We'll click that, and essentially all we got to do is go over this. I'm going to zoom in. Click on, let's see, oops. Click on that value, and it should, yeah, get rid of that constraint. And so I'm just going to do the same thing with that. Same thing with this guy, and same thing with that. So now we can actually change the values of these. But first, I'm actually going to add some constraints to this. I'm basically going to make it so if I change the value for this line, it's going to be the same for this line. And if I change the value for this line, it's going to be the same for this. So we'll use our constraints tool, go up here to constraints. We're going to use the equal tool. I'll just click on that. And I'm going to click that, and then I'll click that, make sure that's equal to itself. Then I will click, let's see, finish sketch. I'll go back over here to this, edit sketch again, and then I'll just put a constraint on these two as well. Back up to constraints, equal, click that, and then I will click that. Okay, I should finish sketch again. Alright, just so those now should be, once I change the values for this side and that side, they should be equal to each other, so it's not weird or lopsided. So I'm going to go back into the sketch right there, right click, edit sketch, And now we should actually be able to change these parameters, which is really handy. Normally you would use something called the sketch dimension tool, but what you can actually do is just click up here, click on that value, double click, and I'm going to change this value to, I think, just 5 millimeters, just add 0.5 millimeters of length to this line, like that. I'll click OK, and you can see it changed that value up here as well as on this line. And then with this, right there, I'm going to double click on that, change it from 12 millimeters to 12.5 millimeters. I think that should give enough wiggle room for the USB sticks to be able to fit in there. So we'll see how that works. So once you're done changing those values, click Finish Sketch. And what we can do, just to double check that that value is copied to all of these other copies, is we can use the Inspect tool up here. So we click on this and we go to the Measurement tool under Inspect. And so what we can do is then we'll click this line, I'll click this second line, and it's saying it's 5 millimeters. So that's what we want. And then I'm going to click up here to the top, click down here. Whoops, oh, it's giving me dimension value. So I'm clicking out of that, go back to Inspect, go to Measure, click this top value, click this bottom value. All right, that's 12.5 millimeters. So that all got copied to each one of these other sketches that were then turned into the extruded down into the holder itself. So what's really nice about this timeline is that, as I showed you, you can go back in time and make a change, and it's actually going to copy over to the other sketch objects that I've copied. So it's a really, really handy tool in case you need to go back in time and change something instead of having to redo the process of copying this, copying that, copying that, copying that. So stay tuned for the next video, and we'll see if this USB stick holder will work. Thanks. Hey everyone, it's me back again. This is the second print I did, and it actually worked, as you can see. The USB sticks fit in there, and they've got some wiggle room, which is nice. It's not super tight for them, so they're easy to remove. Yeah, so doing those changes I did to my model, just increasing each little part of these sides by 0.5 millimeters really helped out. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you learned something from it, and it kind of got some ideas going for you for what you can design at home on your own with Fusion 360. As you can see, it's a pretty powerful program. In the meantime, please keep an eye out to our website at missoulapubliclibrary.org for updates on when we're going to be open to the public next. It's sounding like it's going to be late August when we should be opening our new building, but that could always change. So we just recommend you checking our website at missoulapubliclibrary.org for updates. As well as that, you can also email me. I'm going to put my email in the video below as some text. So if you have any questions, you can also email me. So thanks again for watching this, and take care and enjoy your summer.